Do animals know? When humans are sad, you're having the absolute worst day of your life. Maybe you just got dumped. Maybe your boss humiliated you in front of your entire team. Or maybe you dropped your phone face down on the concrete and watched the screen shatter in slow motion, feeling like it was a metaphor for your entire week. You finally get home. You don't say a word. You don't have to. Your dog, who has spent the last 8 hours aggressively napping in a position that would send a chiropractor into cardiac arrest, immediately walks over. He rests his head in your lap and stares up at you with those enormous, impossibly warm eyes. How did he know? You didn't cry out loud. You didn't explain what happened. You barely made a sound walking through the door. Yet, something in the air shifted, and he felt it before you even sat down. That specific moment is not just heartwarming, it is actually one of the most scientifically fascinating things happening on this planet every single day. The question, do animals actually know when a human is sad, sounds like something you'd see embroidered on a throw pillow. It feels cute and sentimental, but not exactly rigorous. But beneath that fluffy exterior, it is a question that cuts straight to the core of consciousness, cross-species communication, and what it means to feel something in a body that isn't your own. Let's answer this properly, with actual science. First, let's address something that took researchers an embarrassingly long time to admit out loud. Animals have emotions. If you've ever owned a pet, you probably figured this out within 48 hours. You've seen the pure joy when you get home, the sulking when you leave, and that very specific look of betrayal a cat gives you when you open a can that turns out to be chickpeas. Have you ever had a moment where your pet clearly understood how you were feeling? Tell me your incredible stories in the comments below. But science needed roughly a century of careful observation before it was willing to put that reality on paper. For most of the 20th century, the dominant view in biology was behaviorism. The idea was that animals were essentially just biological machines. They didn't feel things, they merely reacted to stimuli. A dog wagging its tail wasn't expressing joy, it was just executing a hardwired behavioral response pattern. It was a very clinical explanation, created by people who had probably never owned a dog. The shift away from this cold perspective came gradually. Researchers studying great apes in the wild started noticing things they couldn't explain away. Chimpanzees who lost companions went through prolonged periods of lethargy, social withdrawal, and reduced eating, something that looked exactly like depression. Elephants would return to the bones of deceased herd members years later, touching them gently with their trunks in a ritual that served absolutely no survival function. Dolphins stayed near deceased calves long after any practical reason to do so had passed. None of this fit the biological machine model. Machines don't grieve. Then came neuroscience, and it changed everything. When researchers looked at mammal brains, they found the limbic system, the network associated with emotional processing in humans. It turns out this is not a uniquely human development. It is present across virtually all mammals, with traces appearing in birds and even fish. This means emotion isn't something humans magically invented. It is an ancient biological tool, hundreds of millions of years old, that evolution kept simply because it works. Fear keeps you away from predators. Attachment keeps groups together. Grief signals the loss of something vital. If you're fascinated by the science behind animal emotions and evolution, hit that like button to let me know. If animals have the neurological hardware for emotion, the next obvious question is, can they detect those same signals in us? The scientific answer is a resounding yes, and how they do it is genuinely mind-blowing. Let's talk about your dog's nose. A human nose has about 6 million olfactory receptors. A dog's nose has roughly 300 million. They aren't just experiencing a sharper version of our world, they are experiencing a fundamentally different chemical reality. When you walk into a room, you just see a room. A dog reads the entire chemical history of every person who has been there, cross-referencing their health status, diet, and stress levels. When you are sad or experiencing genuine emotional distress, your body physically changes. Your cortisol levels rise, your adrenaline shifts, and the composition of your sweat and breath changes. These are measurable molecular events producing compounds that float into the air. A 2022 study published in the journal PLOS ONE tested this precisely. Researchers trained dogs to discriminate between breath and sweat samples from stressed humans versus relaxed humans. With no visual cues, using only a cotton swab, the dogs identified the stressed samples with over 93% accuracy. Your dog literally smells your sadness the way you would smell smoke from a fire. By the time you sit on the couch, they've already read your full biochemical report. But smell is only half the story. Over the last 15,000 to 40,000 years, dogs have lived alongside humans. Through the relentless logic of natural selection, dogs evolved specific cognitive adaptations for reading human facial expressions. In 2015, researchers at the University of Vienna showed dogs photographs of happy and angry human faces belonging to total strangers. The dogs could consistently tell the difference and adjusted their behavior. They were hesitant around the angry faces and relaxed around the happy ones. Even wilder, dogs process human faces using a left gaze bias, meaning they instinctively look first to the right side of a human face, which is the side that most strongly communicates emotion due to our right hemisphere dominance. This is the exact same bias humans use. Dogs built a bespoke layer of cognitive machinery dedicated exclusively to understanding us. Do you think other animals possess this deep level of empathy, or is it mostly domesticated pets? Let me know your perspective in the comments. What about cats? Cats were domesticated primarily for pest control, not emotional labor, but don't let their aloof reputation fool you. An Oakland University study found that cats behave measurably differently around their specific owners who are smiling versus frowning. They approach and purr when you smile, and keep their distance when you frown. Interestingly, this effect was much weaker with strangers. Cats haven't evolved a general human face reader like dogs. Instead, they build a bespoke, individualized emotional model of you. Your cat knows exactly what you look like when you're sad. Horses take this to another level entirely. A 2018 study from the University of Sussex showed horses photographs of angry and happy human faces. Hours later, the horses were introduced to the actual people from the photos, who were now completely neutral. The horses remembered the emotional signal from hours earlier and acted wary around the people who had been angry in the photo. That is memory-based emotional reasoning applied across time. And then there are wild elephants. Elephants have been documented responding to the distress signals of completely different species. Younger elephants have been observed approaching distressed animals of other species with calm, reassuring behavior. They extend their empathetic response across biological lines. If empathy can cross from an elephant to another animal, there is absolutely no reason it cannot cross from an animal to a human. If you want to keep unraveling the deep mysteries of animal psychology and human history with me, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. There's one final layer to this that is perhaps the most profound. It's not just about an animal detecting your sadness. It's about their intentional response. A 2018 Johns Hopkins University study placed dogs on one side of a transparent door with their owners on the other side. Half the owners cried, the other half hummed quietly. The dogs whose owners were crying were significantly more likely to open the door. But here is the extraordinary detail. They opened the door slowly and deliberately, actively regulating their own emotional arousal so they could be more present and useful to their distressed human. They managed their own feelings so they could help you better. Science is profoundly limited when it comes to verifying subjective experience. We can measure brainwaves and chemical receptors, but we can't definitively prove what an animal feels inside. But when an animal has the exact same emotional brain structures we do, acts exactly how empathy predicts, and actively regulates itself to comfort us, the burden of proof shifts. Anyone who has been deeply sad knows one profound truth. Humans try to fix you. They offer advice, reframe the situation, or tell you it could be worse. They are uncomfortable with your pain and urgently want it to stop. Your dog doesn't do that. Your dog doesn't have an agenda or a need to move the situation forward. They just stay. They offer warm, physical, unconditional presence right there in the mess with you. So, do animals know when a human is sad? Unambiguously, yes. Dogs smell it with biochemical precision and read it on our faces. Cats map our individual emotional patterns. Horses remember our moods. We share this planet with creatures who have spent millions of years developing the capacity to feel, and thousands of years developing the capacity to feel for us. Your dog didn't fix your bad day, and he didn't try to. He just put his head in your lap, and completely without words, he told you that you were seen, and you were not alone.